I'm curious. Okay, so the reason why you got into funds is because syndications wasn't working well, and you thought that BlackRock is a fund, and so creating a fund is the way that you want to go about it. Was that your
That's
thought
it.
process?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was in not to cut you off, but I was in a small town. And when I was advertising this out, syndication was not your everyday at the dinner table term or use of a word or even realized. And I realized that as I expanded out my reach, it was definitely something that a lot of people do. But everybody that I talked about is, yeah, I've heard of Blackstone. I know they raise money or whatever. They were confused by it.
Hmm. Okay. That's interesting. That's which is so opposite than what most most of us experience where yeah, it's so much easier to raise for syndication than it is for a fund. So your first fund there, was that a blind pool fund?
Yes, 506C. Now, see, that's the thing is I never really looked at it like a blind pool because I was involved in writing the narrative for this fund. So when I had wrote the narrative, it was a clear outline. You knew exactly what I was going to invest in. You knew the city, you knew the state, you knew the MSA, you knew everything about those MSAs that we were going to invest in. You knew how the money was deployed, the type of debt we put on the property, how we were going to renovate. So I was very detailed in that PPM, your private placement memorandum. And I went through everything to explain exactly what it was. Now, if somebody gave me $100,000, did they know the address that it was going to? Probably not. They knew I was an active buyer. And from that active buyer standpoint, they knew that my track record was, and my Bible was wrote that we were going to invest in this type of asset.
Let's give us like a high level pitch on
Sure.
your fund, on your first fund. I'm curious, what was your pitch that I understand we're gonna talk about the community and everything that led up to that pitch and the opening of that fund. But what was your pitch in the fund that have so many people interested?
So I think first I would admit that I really dug in syndication on why people didn't like it or what was the downfalls of it. So I armed myself and put things in my tool belt why people would invest with me with having a fund over the top of a syndication. And I used that to my advantage. So when I was at events and stuff like that and conferences, I would tell people what I was doing. And I was like, I'm a business owner. And that's the thing I want to admit. I not chose to talk about the other business types that I had done because I felt like that would render my experience. And it turned out that actually it
Mm.
didn't. When I told people that I had a metal fabrication shop and a hot rod shop, they were really, they thought that was cool. And they thought that, man, if you can run this business and you can run real estate. And then they would ask me, how is this pertinent to real estate? And I was like, it's a business. So my pitch was this. So, Tim, I met you in a conference. I would say, Tim, nice to meet you. And of course, I'm a relationship person. So I'm always building that relationship first. And I want to know, I'm not exactly a salesman, although I can be good at sales. I don't come up with a sales pitch right off the bat. I listen and I listen to exactly what you're looking for. And I would quickly figure out that Tim had exited a business or he was in IT and he made a lot of money and he was looking for tax advantages or he was just looking for a lot of money to put it into a real estate deal. And you had also told me that you've done syndications or you had invested in syndications as an LP. And I'd say, okay, so what was the things that you didn't like about being invested as a syndicator and an LP investment? And he said, I've always been concerned, what if something happened on that property? Okay. And I would listen. And then they would say, sometimes I don't always get a return on my investment, quarter over quarter, month over month. Okay. So I would start to build my sales pitch. I was starting to build that relationship. And I'd say, I have an interesting offering, and mine's a little bit different. Have you ever heard of Blackstone? And he's, yeah, I've heard of Blackstone. Have you ever heard of Sovereign Wealth? Yeah. So you've probably also heard of Ameriprise or Edward Jones Finance? Uh huh. Okay, so I have a 506C fund to where I raise private equity to invest in multifamily real estate, mostly B's and C's. and some A's. And I do exactly that. I do Ameriprise or an Edward Jones, except I don't invest in stock, bonds, and mutual funds. I physically invest in real estate, real property, just the same as Blackstone. And another thing, although my fund might be called a syndication, it's a pool of properties that's put together. So it's a portfolio. So yeah, as we invest in the first one, it's a little bit scary at first because we're still working some things out. We're doing a value add strategy. But after we put second property, third property, fourth property, and we look to buy 7 different properties in this fund, I believe I can solve your issue and give you some security around getting a return and solving the problem with not being invested in one single property or in a single asset type in a single city. Really. And at that point, we would usually find a place to go to dinner or go to lunch. And then the conversation would just continue. And then they'd say, I want to hear about Eddie. Because at the end of the day, although it's a blind pool, they were making an investment in Eddie Austin. So they wanted to know
Right.
what my business experience was, what I had done. And at the time, I didn't have experience buying large multifamily properties. So the question would come up, how many assets under management do you have? How many exits have you done? And things like this. I was new, so I didn't have any. I was like, I don't have any at this point. How do you plan to do this? You need experience. I understand completely. We're going to use third-party property management. I can also sign them up as a partner if I want to. And the biggest thing is my fund provides equity. And because I can provide equity, I can attract really good sponsors and operators to partner with me. And I don't want to do this alone. So I'll be looking to partner with certain people. And my boards of advisors on my fund, they have over 3 decades of experience in this environment. And they know what they're doing. And they're like, wow. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but a lot of the times they would say, you've done your homework. Like, I'm impressed. You found the things that I was concerned about with syndication, what I'm currently in, and you found a way around that. Very creative. So what did you do before this? I own a metal fabrication hot rod shop. And then that conversation would continue and the relationship would build and I would earn the trust.
Gotcha. Very good. I like that. I like how you tied them into Blackstone, tied them into Edward Jones and those type of brokerage house. And because that's what they're used to, right? Like that we've all been programmed for that. And so I like that. I like that tied in. And I'm picking up your fund was a fund of fund structure. Is that correct?
No, so that was the thing. My
No?
fund was a straight raising equity to deploy it into our own deals. At the time, this was early 2019, and that I built this fund. I had done smaller real estate up until that point, and I had small door count, multifamily, stuff like that. But being in the big boy world, that was essentially new. What I had found is there was people that would sign on loans for me and there was people that had experience, but they were having troubles putting all the buckets together, having somebody good at asset management, having a sponsor. My fund, what I found is I could actually put people on the team and I could build a team with that because I was very good at finding deals. So I had good deal flow. So I had that figured out. And then I was good at raising the capital. So if I raised the capital and I had the deal, if somebody was just looking for signing on a loan, or somebody was looking for a place to asset manage beside me, it was very easy to put that team together. I think Tim froze on us.
He just might have. Give him a second here to
Sure. I was afraid it was me.
I might just pitch in with a quick question. Your original investors, and I don't know today, did they understand the risks of syndication versus funds? Because I think we all know the lack of transparency in funds and then the need. It's obviously a lot of pressure on you as the GP to maintain performance on a fund with varying different assets that you have to manage and so forth. So how did you handle that?
So it come down to a lot of management software. We had a very good management portfolio software that kind of gave reports and it kind of tells you the entire story of how everybody's investment was. But one thing I learned very on in business is you always over communicate and leave nothing to be assumed. So from the point you're capital raising, always under promise, over deliver, be conservative with your underwriting, know your business plan, know your ins and outs.